The sound didn't belong in a house like this. It slipped through marble hallways and beneath crystal chandeliers, soft at first, then sharper, an uneven, heartbroken sob that echoed where silence usually lived. Ethan Rowland paused at the top of the staircase, his phone still glowing with stock numbers and urgent messages. He was a man used to controlling noise, boardrooms, negotiations, markets, but this sound stopped him cold. It was the sound of a child crying like the world had ended. He followed it down the corridor, past framed awards and polished doors, until he reached the servants' wing, a part of the house he rarely entered. The crying came from the laundry room, where his maid, Maria, stood frozen, her hands clenched in her apron, her face pale with worry. On the floor sat a small girl, no older than 6, clutching a plastic doll with a snapped arm. Tears streaked her cheeks, her shoulders shaking as if each breath hurt. "I'm sorry," Maria said quickly when she noticed him, panic flooding her voice. "I told her to be quiet. She didn't mean to disturb you, sir." Ethan didn't respond right away. He stared at the child, the maid's daughter, Sophia, he vaguely remembered. She looked so small in that oversized room, her pain huge and raw, unfiltered by pride or restraint. He had seen adults cry in his office, begging him to save companies, careers, fortunes. None of those tears had ever hit him like this. "What happened?" he asked quietly. Sophia lifted the doll toward him, as if presenting evidence of a crime. "She broke," she whispered. "Papa gave her to me before he went away." Maria's breath caught. Ethan felt something twist in his chest. Went away could mean many things in homes like this, but in Maria's case, he knew. Her husband had died 2 years earlier in a factory accident, one of many stories Ethan had skimmed past in HR reports without really seeing. "It's okay," Ethan said, surprising even himself. "It's just a toy." Sophia shook her head fiercely. "It's not just a toy." The words lingered long after the crying slowed. Ethan returned to his study, but the numbers on his screen blurred. He found himself staring out at the city skyline he owned pieces of, feeling strangely hollow. He had built everything from nothing, people said. He was proof that hard work paid off. Yet here he was, unable to shake the image of a broken doll and a little girl who had lost more than plastic and paint. That night, he couldn't sleep. Memories surfaced uninvited, of his own childhood in a cramped apartment, his mother stitching clothes late into the night, his favorite toy car held together with tape because there was no money for a new one. He had forgotten how much those small things mattered when you had nothing else. The next morning, the household buzzed with confusion. Boxes arrived, dozens of them, carried in by delivery men who looked just as puzzled as the staff. Maria stood in the doorway, hands trembling, as Ethan instructed them to bring everything into the living room. "For Sophia," he said simply. When the boxes were opened, gasps filled the air. Dolls of every kind, art supplies, books, puzzles, stuffed animals, even a small bicycle. Sophia stood rooted to the spot, her eyes wide, her mouth slightly open. She looked at her mother, then at Ethan, as if afraid this was some elaborate joke. "These are, for me?" she asked. Ethan knelt in front of her, meeting her eye level. "Every one of them." Maria burst into tears, her gratitude pouring out in broken words, apologies, blessings. The staff watched in stunned silence. They had seen Ethan the ruthless CEO, the demanding employer. This version of him felt unreal. But the shock didn't end there. That afternoon, Ethan called a meeting, not with executives, but with the household staff. They gathered nervously, unsure if someone was in trouble. Instead, Ethan stood before them with an expression none of them had seen before, uncertain, almost humble. "I've been blind," he said. "I built my life chasing success, thinking it meant security. But security isn't marble floors or high walls. It's knowing your children are safe. That they have chances." He announced scholarships for the children of every employee. Full coverage, education, healthcare, counseling. He increased wages, set humane schedules, and established a fund for emergencies. Maria nearly collapsed when she realized Sophia would never have to choose between school and survival. Word spread quickly. The household changed. Laughter replaced whispered exhaustion. Children visited on weekends. The estate, once cold and distant, felt alive. Yet not everyone approved. Ethan's board questioned his judgment. "You're running a company, not a charity," they warned. Shareholders grumbled. Advisors urged him to pull back. For the first time in years, Ethan didn't listen. He visited Sophia often. They painted together, read stories. One evening, she handed him a drawing, a big house with many small figures inside, all smiling. Above it, in crooked letters, she had written, "Home." That word hit harder than any financial report. Then came the real test. A market crash sent shockwaves through the company. Losses mounted. The same board that criticized his generosity demanded layoffs, starting with non-essential staff. The easiest solution was to undo everything he had promised. Ethan sat alone in his office, the weight of thousands of livelihoods pressing down on him. He thought of Sophia's broken doll, of Maria's tears, of the trust he had built. Cutting costs would save profits, but at what price? He made a decision that night. Instead of layoffs, he cut executive bonuses, including his own, to zero. He sold one of his private properties. He restructured operations, took risks others were too afraid to consider. It was brutal, exhausting. For months, the future felt uncertain. But slowly, the company stabilized. Employees worked harder than ever, not out of fear, but loyalty. Innovation surged. Productivity rose. The story of a CEO who chose people over profit spread far beyond the company walls, attracting partners, investors, and talent who believed in the vision. Years later, Ethan stood at a graduation ceremony. Sophia, taller now, confident, stepped onto the stage to receive a scholarship award bearing his company's name. She searched the crowd until she found him, smiling and waving. After the ceremony, she ran to him and hugged him tightly. "My doll broke," she said softly, echoing the words from years before. "But you fixed everything else." Ethan felt tears sting his eyes. He finally understood what true wealth was. The household that once watched in shock now watched with pride. One small act of kindness, sparked by a broken toy and a child's tears, had changed not just a family, but an entire world built behind high walls. And in the end, the richest man in the room wasn't the one with the most money, but the one who remembered what it meant to care.